Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. My name is Debbie and I'm a mixed media artist, and if you're new here, welcome. If you're one of my regulars, welcome back. And speaking of regulars, I did miss last week because I had an unexpected migraine that absolutely felled me. I lost 3 days of the week and I'm still trying to sort of work out exactly which way is up. And for anybody who's ever had migraine or other neurological things like that, you'll know it's a bit of a tough sort of climb back into the saddle. So what I've decided to do today is something that's fairly comfort zoney, if that's a word. It is now. And I'm going to do an autumn landscape from the part of England that we spent a lot of time. 9 years we spent in East Anglia, and Norfolk and Suffolk make up East Anglia, a few other little bits and bobs as well. But we were in Norfolk and Suffolk was our largest neighbour. And one thing I love about that is the big open farmlands with a little farmhouse, some trees, big skies and things like that, because it is flat. If you started rolling a ball along it, there's very little to stop it. It would just keep going, which is nice. It's lovely, actually, and you can see for miles. So love that. So bit of housekeeping first. If you like what you see here, don't forget to leave me a like and subscribe. You know, the usual sort of things we do on YouTube. And if you like my style of art and would like to learn more about mixed media painting in this style, then do consider joining my Patreon, where lots and lots of stuff is happening all the time. Not last week, but yeah, there's so much there. You probably wouldn't have missed me very much, actually, because there's heaps to binge watch. So do consider that. All the links are in the description box below. Shall we get on? So I have a A5 landscape sketchbook here, and this one is a Hahnemühle. It is the Nostalgia series, and you can tell this because they've got this lovely, hopefully that's coming out, lovely coarse linen cover, and it's really quite good, actually. Beautiful paper, smooth, takes layers. Just to recap here, this is the sort of thing that I do. That's another one from the area, and another. That was a Patreon tutorial, one of my patrons requested, and this one was just because I felt like making some white paper less white. And that one's a tutorial as well, and so forth. So yeah, all sorts of things. But anyway, it's about the sketchbook. This sketchbook is great. It takes just about everything I fling at it. And I thought today it would be really nice to paint an autumn farmer's field and show you the sorts of things that I particularly like to use to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with a Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer watercolour pencil, because I particularly, if I do sketch some lines, which sometimes I do, let's have a bit of an access road here up to the cottage on the top here. If I do sketch things, I like to sketch them with watercolour pencil because then I get rid of all of the marks. I'll put some trees in there later on and a couple of bushes there. Yeah, sketching with a watercolour pencil first gets rid of those marks as you paint, whereas if you use a graphite pencil, commonly known as a lead pencil, although it isn't and hasn't been for many years, I'm happy to say, if you use those, you don't get rid of the lines. And when you go over graphite with water, just plain water, they set for good. So you're actually stuck with them then. So I really recommend using a light colour, neutral colour. This is a particularly good one. This one's Warm Grey 4 watercolour pencil, and use it really quite lightly. Okay, the next thing I have taken to doing just lately is to go in with a Posca marker, acrylic marker. Doesn't have to be a Posca, it's just this time this is what I'm doing, and I'm going to use that on the house, and I'm going to smudge that with my finger because that makes it quite nice as well. Not too worried about going outside lines. another one. We need a grey one as well. That one, I'm not going to put a list of everything in the description box, but I will say the names and you can list them as you like. This one's a beige one, and it's the 1.8 to 2.5 millimeter one. This one's the same, and this one's not, it's deep grey. I'm going to use this for the roof. And again, don't completely colour the roof, just smudge it. This will work out eventually, although not the way I've done it. Let's just neaten that up. Doesn't matter because this is the end of the house. That's got a bit of shadow anyway. So I tend to use everything as best I possibly can. And in this case, I mean the alignment of where the paper's going. So this is where the sun's coming from. So this side of the house would be in shadow anyway. So I've just mixed those two colours together. I probably could use something a bit smaller, but then if I want to smudge them with my fingers are finger-sized. They're not going to be any smaller, so I sort of just work with what I've got there. Now, my next favourite thing, we'll come back and do more with those as well, but I like to work from the back of the picture to the front, as is usual in landscape painting. That usually means we start with the sky, but I just want to get that little house done. This one is a Jacques Herbin ink, Les Toits de Paris. It's the roofs of Paris, and it's 10 ml, this bottle. I did make a lot of noise about how cross I was that I had ended up buying a 10 ml bottle of ink, and it's a beautiful ink. That was completely my mistake. This is also available in the 30 ml bottle, so just to grab one, this is the size of the 30 ml one. So if you were here for that particular rant, please ignore it. It's my own stupid fault for not reading. I thought that I had paid a 30 ml price, which is about €8, and only got 10 ml. But no, I didn't. I paid 10 ml price. So this came in at about €2, which is really good if you're not sure that you're going to like the ink. I do like this ink, and I now am sure, so I've gone and bought a 30 ml bottle, and that is winging its way here as we speak. We have a holiday here in Germany today, so it won't be here today. So just a bit of water on the brush, nice big brush. Blend that out. Let the textures just happen. And the reason why the house, you can actually put some on here and then put the ink on too, and that stops a harsh line. The reason why I'm not concerned about the house being there already is because none of this will go over the house. That will act as a resist. Let's have some weather coming in there, shall we? We can just get some grey down to here, and yeah, don't play too much with it. Let it do its thing. What we can do then is, as that dries, either drop some in while it's still slightly damp, or leave it until it dries, let it all settle out, and then come back in and put some more on to strengthen some of the shadows. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to dry this ink now, twofold. Number one, so that I can work on it some more. Number two, I'm not going to put my elbow in it or anything like that, and I'm more than capable. So I shall be right back. Okay, so that's all nice and dry now, and if I wanted to, I could come back in, get the water off the brush a little bit, it's a bit too wet. I could come back in and put a little bit more and get to the actual ink in these corners and so forth, where you might expect to see a cloud, that sort of thing. You don't have to, could leave it. I quite like the idea of weather happening in the late afternoon in autumn, because there's an inference that you're going to disappear into the cottage and enjoy it from the comfort of a log fire, which is what we do here in Germany. At the moment, we have a sky this colour, and yeah, that's what I'm planning to do. Okay, so that is the sky and the house. Now I've got here, I don't want a dark indigo, I would like a Mars black, and I'm going to give that a little bit of a sharpen. This one's a Derwent Lightfast, one of my absolute favourites. Not that much of a sharpen. And I will use this to give some definition to the house. So neaten up the chimney there, and a little bit under the eaves here of definition. Also going to use this to put some windows in the house. Maybe one up here, a couple down here. Works. Just define the roof slightly, and on its side I can use it to give some stone texture to the end of that house. And then if I come back in with white, and this one's Derwent Drawing, one of my absolute favourites, then I can burnish that a bit and lighten the end. And just to recap here, as you saw me do, I put the acrylic marker onto the house and then I smudged it with my finger, because that gets rid of any lines that the markers might produce, makes it a lot softer and looks like if it sort of belongs there. So you don't have to do that, but I find it helps. Now this side, of course, as we said, the sun is on this side of the building. I'm just going to make some little dashes on the roof. What I'm after here is some texture. The roof doesn't have to be perfect. There are a few lumpy, bumpy bits. This is an old house. Let's try a Derwent Light Fast in chocolate as well. Sometimes by using the wrong colours, here air quotes, you can get different moods and feelings and textures, warm something up. See, this chocolate is a very dark brown, whereas if I used a grey, it would be a little bit sort of cooler. I want to warm this area up somewhat. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to come back in. Gosh, these pencils. I need some more pencil extenders. That'll be on my list. What I'm going to do now, this is Caran d'Ache and it is green ochre. And it's my absolute favourite go-to of these pencils. I'm going to use this to create some texture by putting it on its side and just creating a little bit of interest around the house, because this will give us a foundation to put some trees on. And I'll use some different things as well just to make it interesting. You might think that green is an odd sort of choice for an autumn scene. It's actually not. And if you look around you in an autumn scene, you will see a lot of red and, or rather, russet tones and yellow ochre, brown and all sorts of things like that. But you will also see the odd bit of green, depending on where autumn is up to and depending on what autumn looks like in your particular area. These are quite a long way away, these trees, and I've deliberately put them slightly above the horizon there. And that is because they will have some little trunks on them here, but they're off in the distance, so we don't want to bring them too far forward. So yeah, these are just trees these might be evergreen bush type trees, or they might be something that hasn't lost its leaves yet because it takes a while. So there's where the edge of the field is. These are the sorts of bushes you might find growing around a house. This is my Mars Black, just to strengthen some of the here. So these might be rhododendrons or big hydrangeas and things like that, whereas these are just sort of, they're regular bushes with stems, just little treelets, the sort of things that grow on tops of windy hills but don't actually flourish because the weather conditions are quite harsh. Okay, so that's that bit. Now the next thing is I would like to use my Mars Black again to go straight over the top of some of these and draw some skeletons of actual trees. And I'm using these breaks. You'll see me making little breaks in the stems here. That's done on purpose as well, as you will see in a second. Sometimes we don't have them. I'm assuming that this is a pretty current picture, and I'm sketching this on the 31st of October. So I'm not being very imaginative about Halloween. I'm afraid it's, like I said, very much comfort zone at the moment. But at this time of the year, you're starting to see quite a lot of some of these branches. You don't have many leaves left to hide them. So although there are some breaks there where I can put some, most of them are gone. And then we can have some slightly thicker ones. Let's get forest and do the same thing. So using it on its side, because I just want to get that in there to finish that row. And back with the green ochre on the end. And what I'm aiming for here is the idea that these are still green because they're not going to be any other colour. They're evergreens or something like that. Because at this time of the year, like I said, it depends what time of the year it is. At this time of the year, most trees have done what they're going to do. Right, so now what I would do is to grab my next favourite sort of marker are these Kuretake Zig Clean Colour Real Brush Markers. Quite a mouthful. What they are is, like I said, a brush marker. They've got the brush there and they've got gorgeous colours. Really, really love the muted colours because I'm a muted colour person, and if I can get something like this with muted colours, I'm as happy as a clam. So what I'm doing, and these are my absolute favourites to use for autumn leaves, just like to actually put these in place, but I don't want to see every leaf like I am. So what I'm going to do is pop these in place over the top of the branches, because these trees have still got one or two leaves clinging to them, but mostly you can see the leaves. Then get a brush. Oh, come on, there must be a brush there. I can see 100. Not the one I want, though. And then just move that ink around a little bit so that it's not so obvious. When I'm painting my trees, when they're a long way away, I tend to do masses and clumps of foliage. I think most people do. If I was to paint anything here in the front, and we will have a little bit of a hedgerow here, then you would be able to see individual leaves, and that sort of gives some perspective, I think. So I'm going to dry that off and I shall return. So now, just to backtrack slightly, this colour was brown, quite simply brown, and it's a sort of a reddish brown. It's perfect. The colour's pretty true to what you see here, actually, on the parts of the pen. The colour is pretty perfect to what you see. You can then go over it again and smudge. Never underestimate the value of your fingers when you're painting. You can smudge bits and pieces and, yeah, really work it in. Down here, this is a bit grainy. I've used my Derwent Lightfast Forest pencil, which is one of my favourites, but it's a little bit grainy and I can see more through here than I want to. So what I'm going to do is I've got my olive green one, and I'm just going to use that to stain the paper a bit and get rid of some of the graininess. We can also use that in here to put some depth in, and again, give it a smudge. It really makes a difference. It's a bit of an art, I'm not going to lie, because when you're smudging, obviously, if you're trying to smudge into a very small area and you've got large fingers, my fingers are not sort of tiny. Let's put a little bit in here as well. We don't want to make it too summery looking, but just a little bit. You've got to get you'll either use your smaller fingers, we've got those, you can use those, or you can use the side. You sort of get the feeling for it when you practice, like most things. So yeah, I really would advise you trying that because it works well. Okay, next thing, I'm going to grab another large acrylic marker, and this one is another Posca. This one's beige and this one's 8mm. And what I'm after doing here is to get some colour on the fields, and not just colour, but also texture, and deliberately leaving white on there. Likes to give the impression of having run out at some point. It hasn't. At least it had better not. I only bought it last week. Right, along there. And like I said, we've got a bit of an access road here. So that... This one's my Posca one. I do love that. And I've got an unbleached titanium from Liquitex, and it's completely wrecked. I mean, look at the nib on that. But it really, really makes nice textures. I would never, ever return this to the store and say, this is ruined, it hasn't lasted. It's perfect. I use it a little bit in here as well. In fact, I've been known, and I did in fact in this one, further ruin the tip, because once it started breaking down, I thought, well, there's no point fighting this. It's not going to get better. So I further scrubbed it out, and now I've got this really, really useful thing for painting trees and stuff with. I like that. Now, the next thing is this is really, really useful, but not very interesting yet. So what I'm going to do is grab some of my art graph blocks. And these are quite nice too, something a bit different. Normally I would reach for gouache at this point, and I'm trying not to. I've got a brown one. Let's try that. Just scrub that over the top, and using my fingers to keep some of the bottom colour in there, because I still want to be able to see what I've done. And I can come back with the acrylic marker and go over the top of that again. One of you did ask before, and I'm going to address it again here because it was an excellent comment. Somebody left a comment to ask if these went gritty and grainy and flaked off at all when they got dried. As you know, some can. They don't, actually. They're pretty darn good, and they stay very much where you put them. So I would recommend Art Graph. I'm trying to use these nicely and streakily because I want to keep all the colours that I've got in there so far. That one, this side. Actually, let's do a different way this side, because we're going to assume these fields have been ploughed a bit and that they're ready for other crops. Gosh, a bit heavy-handed there. Doesn't matter. I'll go back in again. Sometimes there's a bit of going back and forth in a picture like this. The main thing is to get the textures and keep them. Using big brushes. This one's a number 10. It's a Liquitex one, and I've had it for 25 odd years. It's fabulous. I love it. Up the top here, let's just hope that was all in shot. Up the top here, I can still see daylight under there. And what I'm going to do is get some Art Graph and put that on there. And again, predictably, rub it with a finger, because that marries everything together nicely. It sort of anchors the foliage and the house to the landscape. You might even have a bit of shadow here. There's not much shadow coming out of that sky, so be careful with the commitment to put shadows in. But yeah, as you can see there, the Art Graph blocks, yeah, they'll stay there. My fingers are so dirty. They're still a little bit wet, but trust me, they do stay there. Every now and again, I have to put a disclaimer here, every now and again you will get a surface where they don't stick, and they are starting out dry, so it's not a stupid thing to say that they will end up dry and that may flake off. So my advice is to treat them like a soft pastel and fix them. It's as simple as that. Because if you do that, you know they're going to stay put. I use hairspray. And I've used hairspray now for 42 years. I've not had any problems. None of the dire warnings have happened. And I've used it on all sorts of paper, trust me. So just, yeah, use what you've got and see how you go with that. Right, I'm going to dry that now, and I shall return to you very shortly. Okay, the next step now, paper's curling a little bit. I find when I shut the book and I'm finished with it, it's absolutely fine. Now that's a bit drier. It's not coming off at all, actually. And if it does, like I said, I'll fix it. So what I would like to do, and this is with my Mars Black Light Fast pencil, is to come along here and further define the edge of this, which could be either a ploughed bit or an access road. We haven't decided. But yeah, just to give it a bit of texture there. Quite leaning towards a ploughed bit with it all disappearing off. We've got a bit of a vanishing point happening here. For those amongst you who are interested in perspective, I don't pay too much attention to it, apart from a few basics. We can strengthen these as well, same pencil. Quite good to use the same pencil for quite a few things. because it means that you're keeping your colour palette together, sort of thing, and not having too much new stuff in there. I'm going to make a liar out of myself now and just get my, this is light aqua, Derwent Light Fast Light Aqua, because I'd quite like to have some bright spots in the sky here. And this is one of my favourites. It works very well in between the grey ink. Over here as well. Sort of just brings a bit of light into the sky. Especially there. Giving a focal point right in the centre of the painting, which you're not supposed to do, and who cares? I do it all the time. I'm not sure if that's coming out particularly well. Yes, I think it is actually. You've got this, just this little bit of light on the horizon, so it brings a sort of a hopeful feeling, one what hopes, to the picture. Yellow ochre, also Derwent drawing, just to give some highlights here, and again more texture, all about texture. Here we might put some as well, absolutely would. Don't want it down here. I've got something else planned down here. It's a bit of a mystery tour at the moment because, of course, this picture isn't anywhere. It's in my head. So I can't give you a photo and say, oh, look, I'm copying this, because there isn't one. This one is ivory, I believe it is indeed. And it's just to give some highlights on this side, because remember, the main light is supposed to be coming this way, what there is of it at this time of the year. So that's sort of gives us just a little bit of light there. I really like these markers. It's been a long time coming, can I just say. I resisted them for absolutely ages, but I've just been seeing what people are doing with them, and I'm thinking markers, and not just markers, because for those of you who've been following me for a long time will know that I'm a great fan of these Tooly Art markers in 0.07, which is minuscule. Well, just recently, maybe it was the migraine, I've gone the other way, and now I'm using this size, which I really like. I've got a couple here just in case I need them, but I don't think I will. I'm just going to blend that in a bit, still a bit wet actually. Yeah, I've gone the other way now, and I'm absolutely loving the effects that I can get with the great big markers. Right, I did promise something down here that was a little bit different, and what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to reach for some of my favourite Tombos. Here's one. This is a Lyra actually. This is Sepia Dark, and I'm going to just put some colour down there and just sort of smudge it out, because I want this to be a little bit more sort of moody. And remembering what I said before about where we're standing, the idea of this picture is you're walking along a country road and you look up and there's a field. So this here is going to be nice and deep, and this is the hedgerow bit. Let's use that on its side. And this happens quite a lot actually. There'll be a bit of a ditch and then a hedgerow. And I like the fact that I can see all of the resist that has been created by the markers. Let me just show you that up close. All of these gorgeous marks, you can't plan them. They just happen like that. And yes, you will get filthy fingers. They just happen like that. And I really particularly like that. Just give that a short blast, which is a good time to show you. This is my Ranger heat tool. Not selling it, trust me. I bought this a long time ago for my card making, but it's particularly good for drying the stages in a sketchbook. If you've not got one, that sort of doesn't matter either. You can use a hairdryer. I happen to have this, so why not use it? Okay, so now back with Mars Black, and I want to make some random, and I'm pushing this pencil rather than dragging it, random brambles maybe, I think so. They look like brambles, the sort of thing that you would put in a hedgerow or would put themselves there, to be fair, most of the time. And still using the dark brown colours, like so. A little bit of the pencil on its side because that deepens further and gives you more texture. And again, I'm pushing it, as you can see, because that simulates a little bit of grass. Like I said, it's Halloween today, and this is about the time this picture would be here, so I don't want too much in the way of bright stuff unless it's going to stay bright because it's evergreen. Let me go back to that Lyra marker because I can use that to put some leaves onto this, because there's always the odd leaf that's still clinging. Gosh, I'm amazed. I've got my famously untidy and dirty gouache box here, and I've not used it yet. That's what I'm doing. I don't want to. I don't know. I've got a lot of art supplies, as you probably know, and I don't want to forget about the older favourites when I discover a new one. So I might say, oh, I'm going to use this now, and well, what about all these? They've gone off. It takes ages for them to go off, so I'm not too worried. But you know what I mean. We want to keep the older ones in mind as well. I'm going to go back to the art graph ones here, and I've got a lovely sanguine blood red. So I'm going to go in with that, because quite often the good thing about art graph is it will sit on the top and allow you to make these textures. You can also blot it with your finger and it'll sit in there, but it'll blend itself into that hedgerow quite nicely. So yeah, I'm in the process of buying all the colours, as you can quite imagine. And I like to just blend it like that so that you get little bits. You get the leaf that you tried, for in the first place. Let's see if a little bit on these at the back here. They lack a bit in dimension. Careful for fingerprints. You get the leaf shape that you were going for, but when you blot, don't rub in this situation. Be careful on your paper with any sort of rubbing, especially when you've introduced water, because you'll rub a hole in some paper. So do go carefully and get to know what materials you're using. But yeah, the idea is you make the leaf shapes with just strokes like so, and then blot. And then sometimes you get a little halo of colour, like for example, you can see where some of the leaf shapes are still, hopefully, no shine on that. It's really difficult to get it just right. You can see where some of the leaf shapes are, and the rest of it's just sort of like a little halo of colour, which is particularly nice, actually. I'm going to use the brown real brush marker that I used up here, because I don't like to use something just once, just up here and never again. So I would be quite inclined to use this in the same way, just layering up some colours. You might do some long things, bits of grass or whatever, just to get that in. And because this is an imaginary picture, I can do what I like. I might also just pop some up there because it needs a little bit more of something to balance it out. I shall explain. When you use something just once, for example, if you've, say, a London street and you've got a bright red phone box, that's fine. That's then a bit of a feature. But in a landscape like this, it works particularly well to use things in a triangle, whether that triangle's the right way up or, in my case, upside down. So I've got this colour used here, and I've got some down here. I've got green over here. We could do with some green down here. Just marks. They don't even have to be very dominant, just marks, so that you can see that that has come in to the picture as well. And what that does is it ties your picture together. If you look at historical art, you'll see lots and lots of triangle formations, especially in religious art. where you can see people sitting in triangle shapes. Check it out and see. And it's particularly interesting, actually, and we can use it in our art too to make sure that everything's balanced. So you don't just use something here and never again, because it doesn't always fit. I'm going to use the green again here on the field. Not very much, but you do find that in the autumn, when the fields have been ploughed, they may have been re-sown with something which is now showing a bit of green. Or it may be just some grasses coming up. You can glaze with a colour pencil as well and fill in here and there, but I'm going to leave that now pretty much. So this, let me just get some bulldog clips and clip that down. Ah, they do that. Right. Okay. All paper buckles slightly when you introduce any wet media, and we have introduced quite a lot of wet media here. So when the book is closed, put something heavy on top of it and it will be absolutely fine. Or if you're working on a piece of paper, you will have either stuck it down with some tape, or you can put something heavy on it afterwards. I've been known to iron watercolours out of frustration, and let me tell you, it works. Just be careful. Okay, so these are a lot of the colours that I'm using at the moment, and of course, being this part of the world, this is the colour that I see outside. Like I said, this is from Suffolk in East Anglia in Britain, so it looks slightly different here in Germany because we don't have a lot of these white buildings. We do have a few actually plastered buildings like that look very, very similar, but a lot of ours are red brick and terracotta tile. And to be fair, I have a bit more trouble painting German scenery and in autumn because you end up, if you're not careful, with a lot of orange, because we've got the terracotta roofs on the houses, the red brick, and then all around us here in our little village, we can't see the sky most of the summer. We've got so many oak trees and things like that, and chestnuts and hickories and things like that. So once they all start going brown and russety colours, it's just a wall of russet, and it doesn't work well as this does to me. I'll work on that. But yeah, it's better in the summertime because then you've got these lovely orange coloured buildings and green trees, and that works really well. Anyway, I have also lived in Suffolk, so I know it fairly, or lived in Norfolk actually, right next door to Suffolk, so I know it quite well. I hope you enjoyed that. Like I said, don't forget to leave me a like and subscribe and a comment. I have got a few comments to get back to, but I try to get to all of them. The events, like I said, of last week meant that I couldn't, but I'll catch up. And do join me on Patreon if you think you would like to learn a little bit more about this sort of thing. And I have got a lot of tutorials over there. Like I said, check the collections out and you'll see what I mean. Okay, I shall see you next week with something else suitably autumny. I've got a bit of an idea forming, so I'll see you next Friday. Take care. Bye.